Oh.
On September 28, 1948, Eleanor Roosevelt began one of her most powerful speeches. Miss Roosevelt said, "I have come this evening to talk with you on one of the greatest issues of our time. That is, the preservation of human freedom." Miss Roosevelt's goal of this particular speech was to convince the citizens of France and the delegates of the United Nations to eliminate totalitarian governments. Eleanor Roosevelt was the First Lady of the United States and the wife of Franklin D. Roosevelt. As the founder of the United Nations Assembly or Association of the United States, a delegate to the United Nations General Assembly, and a worldwide traveler, she was the most powerful speaker that could be chosen for this job according to her peers. Eleanor Roosevelt's concern over the struggles for international human rights was the reason behind this speech, and she met this purpose 110%. She wanted these people to have the rights and the freedom that they should. She believed every person should have equal rights and should not be discriminated against as to language, sex, religion, or race. She described in detail the differences between totalitarian governments and democratic governments and how each looked at freedom and rights. The Declaration of Human Rights was unanimously accepted except for 4 abstentions: the USSR, Yugoslavia, Ukraine, and Belarusia. The fundamental differences in the conception of human rights between those totalitarian countries and the democratic countries is the reason for their abstaining. Miss Roosevelt felt that there should be equal rights for all and no one should be discriminated against. She wanted to make things clear as to what the differences were of human rights. Miss Roosevelt said, "In the acceptance and observation of these rights lies the root, I believe, of our chance for peace in the future and for the strengthening of the United Nations organization to point where it can maintain peace in the future." Roosevelt then goes on to explain what the definition of freedom is. Miss Roosevelt said, "Basic human rights are simple and easily understood. Freedom of speech and free press, freedom of religion and worship, freedom of assembly and the right to petition, the right of men to be secure in their homes and free from the unreasonable search and seizure from arbitrary arrest and punishment." Miss Roosevelt's goal of this particular speech was to persuade the citizens of France and the delegates of the United Nations to eliminate dictatorships. Democracy means something different in the USSR than it does in the US. In the USSR, the government controls. In the US, the people control. Russia would say that the people control their government by letting their government have certain absolute rights. The US feels that it is certain that some rights can never be granted to the government and should remain in the hands of the people. The political systems in Russia and the US are also different. The USSR has one political party, meaning that they have no choice, whereas the US has more than one political party system. We have free elections by secret ballot. The success of this declaration was mainly due to Roosevelt's heartfelt speech that was given on September 28, 1948. When giving her speech, she spoke to the French citizens and the delegates of the UN. I could just imagine being in the audience and being able to listen to this great speech. When giving this speech, she was so organized and she thought out exactly how she was going to persuade the citizens to eliminate democracy. She was very careful on the words that she used and putting them in the right order when trying to convince the people as well. When hearing this speech for the first time, I was absolutely blown away. Many of the problems that they were having back then that they are still having today. One thing I think we could learn from this is to how they handled the situations. Miss Roosevelt handled and expressed her feelings about the situation very well and with much class. In conclusion, Eleanor Roosevelt's speech on human rights was a very impactful one. She believed every person should have equal rights and should not be discriminated against as to language, sex, race, or religion. She described in detail the differences between totalitarian countries and democratic countries and how each looked at freedom and rights. Miss Roosevelt stated the preamble, "We the people of the United Nations determine to reaffirm faith in the fundamental human rights and the dignity and worth of the human person, and the equal rights of men and women and of nations large and small, and to promote social progress and better standards of life and larger freedom."